Hello and welcome to what might be the most exciting TLDR video ever. How coronavirus is affecting Brexit. Yes, you heard it right, the video on both coronavirus and Brexit, the two biggest media gravy trains ever, and the only things which people seem to have cared about in the last few years. Seeing as you're all self-isolating with nothing else to do but watch endless YouTube videos, we're expecting big numbers on this one. So help us out with the algorithm by commenting and liking and all that jazz. Thanks so much for your support. Regular viewers might know that we make pin badges featuring our countries with shoes graphics. And at this point, we have a whole bunch of countries covered. But we thought that in this time of global crisis, it might be nice to have a design representing global unity. Hence, the new World with Shoes pin. Check out these new designs and all of the others in the store. It's linked down below. So, how is coronavirus affecting Brexit? Well, most obviously, it's making the negotiations a fair bit harder. There was supposed to be a second round of negotiations in London beginning on the 18th of March, but thanks to the coronavirus, they've been cancelled. There were originally plans to do it over video link, but given that there's over 100 individuals involved in the negotiations, that would have been one hectic Skype call. And this probably won't be the last cancelled meeting, especially given that Michel Barnier has just tested positive. Philip Rycroft, the former permanent secretary at the Department for Exiting the European Union, said in an interview, "We risk losing 2 or 3 months because of coronavirus." And that would take out over a third of effective remaining time, which is already very precious. Given that the schedule was already tight, losing 3 months is going to make getting a substantial deal done a lot harder, if not impossible. It's also forced civil servants to stop working on Brexit. According to Telegraph, 2 Director Generals, the second highest ranking civil servants after permanent secretaries, have been forced to move from Brexit to coronavirus duties. And the Cabinet Committee covering Brexit has been paused because all MPs are focusing on the coronavirus. So, if the coronavirus is going to stop all face-to-face negotiations for a couple of months and take up all of the UK's political bandwidth, you think that the government would do the sensible thing and extend the transition period to make sure the deal is done properly and not desperately rushed through. However, it seems that they don't think this is necessary. After announcing that the talks were cancelled, a spokesman for Number 10 said in no uncertain terms, "The transition period ends on December 31st, 2020. This is enshrined in UK law." Michael Gove said a similar thing in the Select Committee meeting a week ago, and Jacob Rees-Mogg told Labour MP Justin Madders that there is absolutely no need to extend the transition period. In fact, in a press conference on Wednesday evening, Johnson was asked this question pretty directly, and he said that there is legislation in place which he has no intention of changing. So obviously there's a government line on this, and they won the election on Brexit promises. But coronavirus is such a good reason to extend, it's hard to imagine that Johnson would face any political consequences for it. So we really don't know why he's not doing it. Another reason why an extension could be absolutely necessary is that no deal would be a complete disaster in coronavirus conditions. No deal planning has actually helped the government and businesses deal with coronavirus in some ways. As part of Operation Yellowhammer, DEFRA did intensive research into panic buying and consumer behaviour, and companies have already analysed their supply chains and in some cases started stockpiling. But according to Tom Enright, Vice President of Global Retail Supply Chain at Gartner, a fair number of companies have already started dipping into their no-deal Brexit stockpiles. So if we do end up with a no-deal exit in coronavirus conditions, companies will have depleted stockpiles, supply chains will already have been disrupted, and most importantly, the government simply won't have the personnel available to enact all of the legislation and infrastructure necessary for leaving the EU and the single market. So that's how coronavirus is affecting Brexit. It's basically making a deal impossible, and the impacts of a no deal much more damaging. So let's look at this the other way round. How is Brexit affecting the coronavirus? Or more specifically, the UK's coronavirus response? Well, the government does seem to be treating the coronavirus as a political issue, insofar as they're apparently reluctant to cooperate with the EU because it might weaken their hand in Brexit negotiations. According to Telegraph, in the wake of the coronavirus outbreak, the Health Secretary Matt Hancock asked Number 10 to stay in the EU's Early Warning and Response System, or EWRS, which essentially coordinates pandemic responses throughout the European Union. Number 10 said no though, because apparently they were worried that it might give the EU political leverage in negotiations. They came under a lot of political pressure for this, so they've included a bit about the EWRS in the draft agreement, which reads, "In case of a serious cross-border threat to health, the Union may grant the United Kingdom, upon its written request, with ad hoc access to the early warning and response system established within the Union, in respect of that particular threat, for the purposes of alerting, assessing public health risks, and determining the measures that may be required to protect public health." Which is just a long-winded way of saying the UK will be out of the EWRS, but they can ask the EU nicely if they want to join it in the event of an emergency. Which puts the UK in exactly the same position as every other country outside the EU. I mean, Lesotho is outside the EU, and it's also asked to join the EWRS. There's nothing special about being allowed to ask to join. Everyone is. Anyway, in that same article, Matt Hancock was told by Number 10 not to attend weekly meetings between EU health ministers. To be fair, the UK isn't in the EU, and Hancock wasn't actually invited in the first place. But surely it makes sense both for the UK and EU to keep each other in the loop when it comes to dealing with the coronavirus. In fact, the German health minister actually asked that Britain, Switzerland, Norway and Serbia to be involved in future meetings on fighting the virus, because this is not just about the European Union, this is about Europe. But as yet, that hasn't happened. Brexit has also put the UK on the outside of the European Medicines Agency, which has a rapid authorisation mechanism for pandemic vaccines and treatments, which would have come in handy about now. This doesn't mean that the UK will be delayed in receiving any treatments, but that it will have to sort out some sort of replacement system if it wants to get any coronavirus vaccine or treatment as soon as possible. Finally, the UK is excluded from the EU's joint procurement process, announced by Ursula von der Leyen on Sunday.
Today it is Italy that rapidly needs large quantities of medical goods, but in a few weeks other countries will need it too. By producing more, keeping it in the European Union and sharing with each other, we can protect our health workers, patients, and contain the spread of the virus. This is why I propose this European solution today.
The €140 million programme essentially makes sure that the countries that need supplies get them as quickly as possible by mass buying test kits and ventilators on behalf of the 27 EU member states, while at the same time limiting the exports of medical supplies. The UK is no longer a signatory of the EU's joint procurement agreement, agreed in 2013 in response to the H1N1 swine flu outbreak. But it is still basically in the single market, so there's no reason they couldn't join. And this would make sense, given that the UK is in such desperate need of ventilators that it's asked Dyson and Rolls-Royce to start building them. So, that's how Brexit is affecting the UK's coronavirus response. Put bluntly, the UK and perhaps the EU are unwilling to cooperate with one another because they think it might look like they need one another, which would weaken their negotiating stances. So what do you think? Do you think that this is pathetically petty politics and that both sides should just suck it up and cooperate in the face of a global pandemic? Or do you think this is just the reality of politics, that everything can and should be used as political leverage, no matter how serious the issue is? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. You can also get involved in the conversation over on Discord. There's a link to the server down below, and by joining, you can take part in discussions on topics ranging from US politics and the 2020 election to gaming and philosophy. Join the approaching 2,000 people on the Discord today by discussing a variety of topics from a variety of different perspectives. You can also discuss our videos, and if you're a patron, you can access a super exclusive bonus channel where you can talk to Team TLDR as well as other patrons. Check out the Discord today by clicking the link in the description. Anyway, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more of our videos, and hit the bell icon to be notified every time we release a video, especially during this coronavirus outbreak. You can also find more from TLDR News across our other social media accounts simply by searching for TLDR News. And if you want ongoing updates on the UK government's approach and advice surrounding coronavirus, head over to our website, tldrnews.co.uk, where we're regularly updating our articles on coronavirus advice. Special thanks to our Patreon backers who make all of this possible.